Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty Scouting Report. Pittsburgh Steelers host the Dallas Cowboys this Sunday evening. Should be a really good matchup between, I should say, two marquee NFL franchises. The Steelers and the Cowboys have a history. They don't get to play each other that often, but their history is pretty rich. And as I mentioned, these are absolutely two of the marquee franchises because they have fans not just all over the country but all over the world. Both of these franchises do. We're going to do a little tail of the tape and just break down everything within this matchup and see who's going to win at the end of the day. We also have our man Locked On Landon McCool, who's from Locked On Cowboys, who's going to be jumping in and discussing this matchup at the end of the day. So make sure you stick around and take a look at that. So without further ado, let's jump into this. But before we do, remember to continue to like, follow, subscribe, continue to leave those comments, man. Steelers Almighty is still the fastest growing Steelers channel on YouTube to date. So that's all because of you guys, man, and the participation that you guys have. So I appreciate it. Let's get into this. So first things first, let's break down the personnel a little bit. Dallas, look, on offense, I think it goes without saying. Dak Prescott runs the ship. CeeDee Lamb is right there with him. And then I would think the next part of it is Tyler Smith and Zach Martin. Those guys, all pros, outstanding guards. But it kind of starts with Dak Prescott. Now, look, people are going to say whatever they're going to say about Dak Prescott, his postseason record and some of that. There's no denying what he does in the regular season, especially last season. He was phenomenal. He just was. Whether you want to admit that or not, Dak Prescott was that guy. CeeDee Lamb put his name in the conversation of being a top 5 receiver last year. You know, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a slow start this season, but I don't think there's any question that he's a top 7. If you don't want to put him top 5, I think you have to put him as a top 7 receiver in the National Football League. Just absolutely phenomenal duo. We'll get into that a little bit when we talk to Landon McCool later from, like I said, from Locked On Cowboys. So it's just those two. When you're talking about offense, you start there. Defense, look, we know Micah Parsons. We know DeMarcus Lawrence. But both of those guys are going to be out. They're battling injuries. DeMarcus Lawrence is on the IR. Looks like that Marshawn Nealon is going to take his spot. He's a second-round pick from 2024. Cowboys are high on him. They like him. And then with Micah Parsons being out, Chauncey Golston, again, he's a third-round pick from 2021. Cowboys are high on him. They like these two guys. Not saying that they're the same caliber, clearly, as Lawrence. Lawrence is one of the best run defenders in the defensive end in the run game that there is in the National Football League. I went back and looked at some tape on what he does in the run game. It's incredible. And he's done that for several years. So that's a big loss there, especially with their run defense the way that it is. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But also they got Trayvon Diggs. I know he's battling back from ACL last year. I don't think he's quite into form just yet, but he's getting there. He's getting there. And we know what he is when he's fully healthy. He's one of the better corners in the National Football League. I said this, when it happened. The year that he led the NFL in interceptions, I thought the next year was a better year that he had because the year that he led the NFL in interceptions, there was a lot of yards that he gave up, a lot of gambling, a lot of trailing and stuff. The next year didn't have quite as many interceptions, but he covered guys better. And that's the thing. You can talk about interceptions, and I get that, but he covered guys better. But when he's healthy, one of the top cornerbacks in the National Football League. Look, they didn't really do a whole lot in free agency. We know the big contracts that they signed for Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. They concentrated on bringing their guys back. I guess if you want to say bringing Zeke back, that's fine. But yeah, they didn't do a ton, which again, to Cowboys fans, it's like, what are you doing? Why aren't we signing more guys? I get it. But that's kind of what the Cowboys do. They don't usually make a big splash in free agency, and this year was no different. Tyler Guyton, first round pick, starting at left tackle. Cooper Beebe, third round pick, starting at center. Um, it's tough sometimes. I mean, those to me, those are two most important positions on the offensive line, left tackle and center. And you got two rookies there. Both of them have played well. BB better than Guyton, in my opinion, although I think Guyton's had his moments. But again, who he's had to go against early on in the season is kind of a who's who as far as pass rushers in the National Football League. So, yeah, he's going to have a little bit of struggles, but I think as the season goes on, he's going to get some things figured out. I think he's a tackle of the future for the Dallas Cowboys. Moving on to the matchups here, you know, I, it's the one that stands out, obviously, strength versus strength, is the Steelers defense versus the Cowboys offense, passing offense. And I should say the Steelers passing defense. Now, I know what people are going to say is, the Steelers got chopped up last week. They did. They did. But it's still a good defense. So I would just say the Steelers defense overall trying to shut down what Dallas is doing passing. I think that's a big time matchup that we're gonna have to try to slow down. Again, we didn't look good against the Colts last week. Maybe there was some coaching. I know there was a quarterback switch. Guys just didn't play well. Let's just call it what it is. They just didn't play well. Got to be different. Dallas can throw the football. They can throw it. And if you give them the opportunity and you give them the time, they're going to pick you apart. I mean, Dak Prescott can do that. Now, as far as the strengths and against the Cowboys' weakness, look, the Steelers' run defense against the Cowboys' rushing offense. Look, I mean, the Cowboys, I just can't explain it. But the Cowboys can't run the football, not even at all. They haven't had a running back have more than a 10-yard carry all season long. And as Steeler fans, I know what you're thinking. Well, our run game's not that great either, Big B. It isn't. I'm not saying it is, but it isn't that. Okay? That much I can tell you right this very second. It is not that. They literally, CeeDee Lamb has the longest rush for a Cowboy this year. It's 12 yards. No running back has a run more than 10 yards, and that's only once. They don't have like 5 or 6 guys that have a 10-yard carry. No, no, no. They have one. They're rushing offense. And again, with 2 guys inside that are really good. Tyler Smith and Zach Martin are really good, but right now it's just not clicking. They kind of do what the Steelers do, and you'll hear Landon talk about that a little bit later, is that they make their guys earn their positions. Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe, they didn't get the job immediately, when they got into camp. They make them earn it, kind of like the Steelers do the same thing. Even though they have the talent and the ability to do so, they make them earn it during camp. So it took them a little while. Well, they're still in the phase of understanding each other's moves. And I'm just talking about the entire line as a whole. So it may take them a little bit to get it all figured out. Doesn't mean those guys can't play. It's just playing offensive line, you got to have some cohesion. And right now, the Cowboys just don't have it. But I would say more than that, they don't have a running back that's capable. That's what I would say about the Cowboys. And I know Cowboys fans, you're going to say, finally, you got to it, Big B. Yeah, they just don't have a running back that's capable of doing anything right now. And that's, to me, that's the biggest issue. As far as the Steelers' weakness, I just talked about it. It's the Steelers' passing game or passing defense against the Cowboys' passing offense. Look, we got chopped up last week. We couldn't figure it out until the fourth quarter. We just couldn't. So, and Dallas can move the ball through the air. They can do that. So we're going to have to figure it out. I think what the Steelers are going to have to do, find a way to get more pass rush. If you can get Dak off his spots, that's the best. I mean, that's the same way you can say that about any quarterback, but make them uncomfortable. They're going to do what they do to try to take away TJ Watt. But I blame that last week more on the coordinators not changing and not finding other ways to get TJ free. Stop letting him be double teamed the entire game. Mix up some stuff from time to time. Call more stunts, all that kind of stuff. Do something different to make them be different, if that makes sense. Is that you can't just line up, we're going to rush forward, we're not going to slant, we're not going to twist, we're not going to do any of those games and just hope for the best. Steelers didn't do a good job of adjusting to that last week. So that's what I would say would be the thing that the Steelers need to worry about most is that passing offense against our pass defense. Again, I'm not saying our pass defense is bad, but last week it wasn't very good. Now against Atlanta, look, I know what people are saying about that Atlanta game. Well, Kirk Cousins was rusty. I don't want to hear that. We just saw him literally on Thursday night throw for 500 yards. I mean, the man was phenomenal. The Steelers shut all that down. So we have when we need to, we can crank it up. We just got to play better. I mean, just there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Steelers played bad against the Colts. Just can't take that away. Now let's go to kind of the tail of the tape per se. The game's in Pittsburgh. It's gonna be. I think there's a chance for rain on Sunday night, but who knows? I mean, it's Pittsburgh. I mean, the weather can change at the drop of a dime, so who knows there? Coaching. Look, I understand that Mike McCarthy beat Mike Tomlin in a Super Bowl. I get it. But let's not kid ourselves. Mike Tomlin is a better coach than Mike McCarthy. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. I'm sure I'm going to get some pushback from some people. I get that. But Mike Tomlin is a better football coach than Mike McCarthy. Let's just leave it at that. The history of this is pretty close. The Cowboys lead the series 17-16. They don't get to play each other that often. Basically, it's every 4 years. Both teams haven't advanced far enough in the playoffs to face each other in a Super Bowl. And even on the flex 17-game schedule, neither one of these teams has been that flex game that have played each other. I think the NFL should do a better job of that. I think these teams can play, especially with the 17 game, that extra game in there. I think they can do a better job of putting these two big time franchises against each other. They split the last four meetings. Steelers won in Dallas in 2020, the COVID year, 24-19. It was a crazy football game. Dak was hurt, and backup quarterback came in, was throwing darts, and the Steelers had to come back to win, but they did. Wasn't that many fans at the game. It was COVID year was just silly. It was just wild, man. Just a wild time. But the Steelers did win that game. I don't suspect anything that happened then 4 years ago is going to have any bearing today. As far as the rosters are concerned, I think it's pretty close. I do. I think it's pretty close. I will say that the Steelers have slightly a better roster. Go man for man. I think the Steelers roster is slightly better. Again, that doesn't mean the Cowboys roster is bad. I just think when you go and you look at it, especially when you talk about some depth at certain positions, I believe the Steelers have a slightly better roster. The matchups, they favor the Steelers. The way, even with all the offensive line injuries that the Steelers have, the matchups, they still favor the Steelers. I would give them that edge. And I'm not sure it's really that close because when the Cowboys try to run the football, they're just not capable of doing that right now. And it's that big of a deal. There's other matchups out there the Steelers can exploit. But right now, I think the matchups favor them by a lot. They do. And as far as the outcome, look, I've heard people say, "Oh, this is the Steelers' get back game. This is an opportunity for them to blow somebody out." You're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself, man. First off, the Steelers aren't built to blow anybody out. That is not how they are built. So they're not going out here and scoring 45 points, and shutting some 45-10 game. That is just not what the Steelers are about. They're literally not built that way. Doesn't mean it can't happen. This is the NFL. Anything can happen, but they're not built to blow teams out. Secondly, the way that Dallas can throw the football, I mean, they're going to be in a game. Even if you get ahead of them by a couple of scores, we've seen it this season. They have the ability to come back on you. So I think the game is still going to be close. I've got the Steelers 23-16. But yeah, anybody that thinks the Pittsburgh Steelers are just blowing anybody out, they're wrong. That's not going to happen. The Cowboys are a very formidable football team. Yes, they've got some injuries on defense. I know how good Micah Parsons is. He's phenomenal. Not good as TJ Watt, but he's still very, very formidable defensive player. DeMarcus Lawrence, outstanding defensive player. Not as good as Cam Hayward, but still very, very good. So, I get that those guys are going to be out. But let's not be silly, Steeler fans. We're not blowing anybody out, and that's okay. That's okay. We just need to win. Play well, win a football game. That's all that we need to do each and every week. Play well, win the game. Whether it's by 3, 10, 23, whatever the case may be, just play well and go win. So we're going to bring in my man, Landon McCool. Again, he is from Locked On Cowboys. I spoke to him last year on a different podcast. Big time Dallas Cowboy guy, knows his stuff, man. You're going to appreciate what he brings to the table here. So, like I said, when you get an opportunity, if any Cowboy fans have stumbled upon this page, man, make sure you guys go like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff on Locked On Cowboys. We'll bring him in now. All right, everybody. We got our man, Landon McCool, who's coming in from Locked On Cowboys, covers the Cowboys. Landon, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm excited, man. This is a big game against two storied franchises that don't get to play each other very often. So yeah, I think I'm excited about the matchup. But I'm excited to kind of just get into a little bit of the pageantry of olden days. I mean, really it's olden before our times, to be honest.
Right.
We're talking, but still some storied history there.
Absolutely. I mean, two of the marquee, if not the two biggest marquee franchises in the NFL. You're right. They don't play each other very often. I think some of that is because we haven't done very well in the playoffs to be able to make
Hmm.
it to a Super Bowl for a
Mm,
while.
mm.
So, that's troubling. But let's kind of get into this. Lot of headlines going on with the Dallas Cowboys, it seems, these days. Just, you know, um, Jerry Jones. Look, I understand he's always in the headlines, but it
Yeah.
seems like more than normal right now, talking about players he didn't get, players he did. Does it seem that way for Cowboys fans? That there seems to be, I know there's always a lot of drama going on, but does it seem to be more this offseason?
I mean, I will certainly give you that, having the contract discussions with Dak and CeeDee Lamb both happening all off season long,
Right.
certainly, shown a white hot a spotlight on Jerry Jones almost every single day, to the point where we practically banished, talk about Dak and CD's contract talk on our show, because it was like, we don't have much else to say, guys. They're going to sign this deal when they want to sign this deal. And frankly, I've been through these a lot now,
Right.
it's hard not to feel like, the Joneses like to say deadlines make deals, but it's hard not to feel like that they kind of hold on to that deal just a little bit longer, just to hold on to that spotlight. Because I think Jerry really likes being in that spotlight. So any opportunity he can use to get the media talking about him.
Right.
What's the old saying? Any press is good press. And I
Correct.
think Jerry definitely buys into that.
Right. I mean, it's literally pretty much the exact opposite when it comes to the Rooney family. It's like
Oh
they
yeah,
stay as
oh yeah.
far away from the spotlight as
Our,
possible.
our two franchises, honestly, are could not be more different. In a lot of
Right.
in a lot of different ways. And the way
Right.
they run each the way they run, a way they it's funny because they are both, like you said, storied franchises, but in a lot of ways they are mirror images of each other in a way that's very interesting.
Right. And it's different but equal. Like I said, they're passionate fans all over, not just the country, all over the world
Yeah,
for both of these
absolutely.
franchises. Digging in a little bit as far as the season with the Cowboys so far, 2-2. Um, Again, victory over the Giants. Look, I don't know. You hear a bunch of stuff online, you see stuff online and on TV. How big of a win, although maybe not super impressive against the Giants, but how big a win was it maybe just for the psyche of the Cowboys?
This is one of those situations where maybe the win wasn't so huge, but the fact that they didn't lose is enormous. Like I think that's more the thing, is that if they had lost three straight games, the Cowboys hadn't lost back to back games in the McCarthy era so far.
Right,
For them to lose three straight games with everything that had been going on so far that season, I think the city of Dallas would have lit a fire, to be honest. So I think it wasn't exactly a win that you're going to hang the banners on. Dak Prescott has not lost a game to the New York Giants since his rookie year, when he lost both of his games to the
Mhm.
Giants. So again, it's not super shocking, but again, the fact that they avoided the loss and avoided a mutiny potentially in that locker room, I think that was a very big win for the Cowboys.
Gotcha. So, kind of looking at the offense, we'll start there. Cowboys have struggled a little bit to, well, I say a little bit, a lot to be able to run
Mm,
the football this year.
yeah.
What are some of the reasons behind that? Because you look at a lot of times when you run the football, I know it takes 5 offensive linemen, and I get that. But they have two really, really good ones in Tyler Smith and Zach Martin. They just do. But what is some of the reasons that they haven't been? Is it really as much as they don't have maybe a marquee running back, or is it deeper than that?
Yeah, I think Look, I think the running back situation plays into it, of course.
Right.
But I think most folks will tell you that the offensive line has probably more to do with the success overall with the running attack than running backs do, and I think that it's not a talent issue so much as an experience issue. They have two rookies that they really like that are playing well, but I think with running specifically in the coordination of that, it's a lot of timing stuff. It's a lot of fits, getting used to like playing hip to hip in a double team when you're trying to drive a guy off the ball. Like in that feel for like when you're the center in inside zone and you bump the guy to your to the guard and you're trying to get to the second level. It's that that kind of unspoken communication between the guard and the center, like, hey, I got this guy, now I'm getting to the second level. It's that stuff that they just kind of hadn't really fully worked out yet, and it felt like they started these guys, they moved these guys to the starters a little bit later in training camp.
Mhm.
They weren't immediate starters, and that's kind of a thing that Dallas has done in the past, is that they make these guys kind of earn their starting spots. And so I think they missed out on some reps, early in the middle part of training camp, as far as the kind of tightening the screws on the coordination of the running game. I think you're starting to see the kind of thaw of preseason work a little bit. So that's why you're seeing,
Mhm.
as the last few games, the Cowboys have run the ball a little bit better.
Right.
It's because I think now that they've gotten some experience with each other, some coordination with the running backs, and to be honest, to your point, I think the Cowboys coaching staff has kind of figured out a little bit better what they want the running back touches to look like, right? I think
Sure.
there was kind of a start to like, hey, it's Zeke. We're giving it's Zeke 2017, man. Let's give him the ball, and he's that same guy. And I think as they started to realize is that look, Zeke still has a lot of usefulness, but he's not the lead back guy that he was anymore.
Right.
Now he's more useful as kind of a third down pass blocker, short yardage guy, and Rico Dowdle is the guy that really should be getting the majority of the touches. And then they've got this guy, I don't know if you've seen him yet, Hunter Lipke, who is their fullback who does some stuff in third downs as well. He kind of plays some tight end as well.
Mhm.
So they started to give him some touches as well. So I think it's been a little bit about a coordination issue between the offensive line and between the offensive line and the running backs, but also, like you mentioned, kind of the coaches figuring out exactly what they want to do with this running back room.
Gotcha. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Two rookies starting on the offensive
Mhm.
line. The Steelers were kind of in that situation till Faetanu got hurt and was
Yeah.
out. But now it looks like they might still have two rookies with Zach Frazier and possibly Mason McCormick, depending on who's going to take over for the injured James Daniels. It was last week. But speaking of rookie offensive linemen, look, I got a vested interest in Cooper Beebe. I played at
Okay.
Kansas State.
Oh
So
man.
I root for him
So
absolutely.
you know about him. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Look, I have no qualms with saying that Cooper Beebe is the best offensive lineman to ever play at Kansas State. I mean, I don't
Okay.
even think
Wow.
it's up for debate, to be honest with you. But him and Tyler Guyton coming in, it's not often because center, left tackle, two of the most important positions on the
Yeah,
offensive line,
absolutely.
and you got rookies there. The Steelers are kind of the same way, Landon, where they make you earn your job, even if you're the most talented guy. And we saw that with Zach Frazier. Even
Mm.
though he got the job, I guess he may have taken over the position from Nate Herbig just because he was a better player. I mean, it's
He
proven
is,
out to
yeah.
be that way, but it didn't start that way, kind of the same way. So those two guys, I'm assuming Cowboy, not only the fans, but the coaching staff got to like what those two rookies are doing because they seem to be playing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, especially Cooper Beebe has been,
Yeah.
outstanding. And honestly, to be kind of frank, it was if you would have asked me 2 weeks left to go with training camp, if I thought, well, let's not say that, let's say 3 weeks left to go with training camp, if I would have thought that Cooper Beebe would be the starting center, I would have told you I didn't think he would have made it. I didn't think he was
Gotcha.
improving fast enough to kind of take that spot, but there was something that clicked for him about 2.5 weeks out of that last, that first week before the regular season, and he really just took off, and he grabbed that brass ring. And not only has he been did he get the starting job, but he's been incredible. Like, he's really
Right.
played very well. I think I don't think he's given up any sacks, and I think he's maybe only given up a handful of pressures, maybe 2 or 3 pressures this entire the season so far. And right now, the guy that the Cowboys are worried about a little bit more not worried, is that the guy that's going through the kind of growing pains of
Right.
playing NFL left tackle is Tyler Guyton.
Right.
And again, I think his assignment has been extremely difficult. His first assignment going into the NFL as a rookie was against the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in Miles
Right.
Garrett, who I think you guys know a little bit about. So yeah, I mean, and then it hasn't gotten a lot easier. We played Baltimore, we played Seattle, New Orleans, both of which has quality pass rush. New York has obviously added a lot to it with Burns
Mhm.
and Thibodeau. So I think it's been a murderous row for him, and it's not going to get any easier this week. That's for sure.
Right.
We play probably the most difficult defensive line that we're going to face all season, and so it's going to be. Again, kind of continued rookie taking his lumps early in the season, but the hope is that both of these guys, they take their lumps early in the season. They're going to take some losses against the likes of T.J. Watt and Hightower. Like,
Sure.
that's high powered stuff. But hopefully is that they take their losses, they learn, and then they get better. And that's kind of been the Cowboys' offensive line way. Is that
Mhm.
you make them earn it, and then you throw them in there early, and then they take their lumps, and then they grow really quickly. That's happened with Tyler Smith. That's what happened with Zach Martin. Terrence Steele is a guy that had a similar kind of pathway once he got his opportunity. So I think that's likely what's going to end up happening with Tyler Guyton, because I think he has the skills, but it's been a brutal assignment after brutal assignment for the first month of it, and I don't envy the poor guy.
Gotcha. Moving on to Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Look,
Hmm.
you know, people can say whatever they want about Dak Prescott and his postseason numbers.
And they
Uh,
will.
I mean, and you're right, and they will.
And they
But you
will.
can't deny what he does in the regular
Mm.
season. How special, number one, is that tandem of Dak and CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd argue that they're probably the best tandem, quarterback wide receiver tandem in the league. I mean, as far as just, I don't think that Dak necessarily is the best quarterback in the league. I don't know that CD is necessarily individually the best wide receiver in the league. But I think that tandem has produced at a level that's pretty unprecedented the last 2 seasons, and
Yeah.
plus it feels like. So I think that is, and like, if you're gonna knock the Cowboys for anything, it's maybe, that they need to kind of further expand Dak's weaponry on the offense a little bit. We'll see how much weaponry he's got. Now that Brandon Cooks is down this week, and he's going to have to play with some of these younger players that they've been developing. But back to CeeDee Lamb, I think there's a reason that that they feel like they can do stuff like that. They can
Hmm.
feel like that they can lose their wide receiver too, and that they can try to replace it with, a group of guys that still are kind of getting their experience, right? Like Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks and Turpin and those sort of guys. I think that's because they know that they can feed CeeDee Lamb 12 to 14 targets in this game. He'll get anywhere from 8 to 10 catches for 100 something yards, and it's maybe some touchdowns, and it kind of, it will depend on opponent. It will depend on who's covering them, of course. It will
Right.
depend on the ability of the quarterback to be able to get the ball out. But I think that one thing that's been pretty amazing to watch is, kind of despite circumstance and a lot of other things, like you said, maybe only specifically right now for the regular season,
Mhm.
uh, Dak and CD have been able to produce at a pretty, even pace since about week 4 or 5 of last season,
Gotcha.
in a pretty reliable way.
Yeah, I mean, last year was just absolutely amazing what they were able to do. Like Dak Prescott had basically MVP numbers. I know he didn't win
Yeah.
it, but they were MVP numbers in the regular season. So,
Hmm.
moving on to the defensive side, look down to Marcus Lawrence,
Yeah.
possibly down Micah Parsons. Um,
Oh, definitely, definitely down Micah Parsons. He's not playing
okay,
for them.
I mean, I'd read some stuff,
I'm not
but
breaking any news. He's definitely not playing for sure.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah.
and the Cowboys have had problems stopping the run.
Yep.
They changed all defensive coordinators. I mean, I know Dan Quinn got a new job as the head coach in Washington, but the same things still keep happening with that. And I'm just trying to figure it out, Landon, because look, I don't think it's a talent necessarily issue, or you can tell me that I'm wrong. Maybe it is a talent issue for them not to be able to stop the run 170 yards a game. I mean, that's a lot. So
Yeah,
I don't
it is.
know
No,
what
and
what is
I
some of the problems going on.
I think part of it is a little bit of a talent issue. I think the problem specifically has been in the defensive interior, right? Like clearly you mentioned those guys, Demarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons. Those guys are all pro, Pro Bowl type guys, right? So
Right.
and to be fair, I mean Micah earlier in his career may have struggled a little bit more defending the run from the defensive end position because he was undersized and
Hmm.
obviously that was a concern. I don't think that's been an issue for him this season. He's played the run very well. He's bulked up. And Demarcus Lawrence, I think pound for pound may be the best run defender in all of football as far as I'm concerned. Like
Right.
especially at the defensive end position, I can't think of anyone who plays the run on a down by down basis better than him. The problem is that what they're doing is that they're focusing their run on getting double teams to those guys, and the defensive tackles and the nose tackle have done a poor job of kind of shielding the linebackers and the second level players from second level blocks getting to them. The area where the Cowboys specifically have struggled are in these sort of wide zone offenses, that the kind of so-called Shanahan offenses, the
Hmm.
outshots of that. You look at the Kubiaks from New Orleans, right? And then I think when you look at the Baltimore Ravens run attack, I mean, again, I don't need to tell you guys anything about Lamar Jackson or all that. I'm sure you guys haven't found out about Derrick Henry yet, but you're familiar with him as well. So
Right.
I think that contributed to as well. I think that the thing that gives Cowboy fans some hope here is that they have made investments here, right? They have a
Hmm.
first round pick in Mozzie Smith that has been underperforming, obviously,
Right.
for all his rookies. I mean, look, he probably went into the wrong kind of system with Dan Quinn because he ended up losing a bunch of weight, and they tried to make him kind of a gap penetrator guy only. That's not necessarily his game. This Zimmer is a much better fit for him, but he to kind of add literal injury to insult. He had a shoulder thing over the offseason, so he had shoulder surgery in the offseason. And it's just been kind of a difficult, start because he's had to, recover from that to even try to, come back and gain, 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. It's like,
Right.
it's just been kind of tough on the guy. But having said all that, he played an incredible, I mean, not a good game. He played an incredible game against the Giants. We went back and watched the tape. We could not even believe our eyes. And it really had started in the fourth quarter of that Ravens game. He started like
Mhm.
something seemed to click with the guy, and he seemed to be pushing guards and sitters back. He seemed to be taking on double teams a little bit. Now, it's not going to solve all their problems, immediately. But if he could play, if something has clicked, if he started playing with better pad level, he is incredibly strong, amazingly strong. He broke
Mhm.
weightlifting machines at Michigan. For
Right.
like they said that he's the strongest torque creating player they've ever seen. So we know that he's a big, strong guy. The question becomes like, can he do enough to, create kind of a gravity in the middle of the defense to kind of stop those attacks that are trying to get guys onto their linebackers because they have linebackers who can run and hit. Who they've got a
Hmm.
guy named Overshone, and
Yep.
they drafted from Texas. He's really played well since coming back from an ACL injury. But it all starts kind of with the Cowboys defensive tackle spot. Can Linval Joseph, who's another guy they signed, can those guys find ways to kind of keep the second level clean? And if they can, I think they'll be able to stop the run. But that doesn't mean that the Cowboys' problems are over yet. At that
Right.
point, then we got to talk about how they're going to stop the pass, because that's a whole different thing, right? Without Micah Parsons and Demarcus Lawrence.
Yeah, and that was going to kind of be my next question as far as some of the keys to win. Obviously, stopping the run is one of those things.
Yeah.
How do they generate enough pass rush? It's not that the Steelers are out there throwing for 400 yards or anything like that, or that they're going to throw it 40 times, but they do drop back and pass from time to
Yeah.
time. And Justin Fields is pretty elusive. What are some of the keys to victory for the Cowboys, especially with those two guys out? It's got to make it a heck of a lot tougher.
Yeah, so I think what they're probably going to do is the guys that they have replacing them are Marshawn Nealon, who's a second round pick that they really liked, and he's played really well. And this is a huge opportunity for him. He's a guy that you could see, like, of all these replacements, he's a guy that maybe he uses this as an opportunity to break out. So keep an eye on them. We'll see how he plays. He plays like a bowling ball, with knives taped to him. And then the other guy that they've got, I mean, that's one thing that the Cowboys are lucky at, is that they're really deep at this position. Even before they lost these two guys, they also lost Sam Williams for the whole season in training camp. But they still have top 100 draft picks to fill them up. Nealon was a second round pick, and then they still have third round pick Cedric Golson, who's going to be he's kind of been playing some tackle. He's kind of an inside outside guy. I think he'll play, more of defensive end to kind of fill in for the injuries. And I think what that means is that they'll be a little bit stouter against the run in early downs. And I think this is the time that you start to see Mike Zimmer earn that cash, right? Is because the difference between Zimmer and what we saw with Quinn last year is that Quinn is always a 4-go guy, drop 7, right? Like, we'll beat you with pass rush with 4, and then we'll drop a bunch of guys and we'll make you try to throw against that. I think with Zimmer, he's going to look at who he's got pass rushing. He's going to realize that it's probably not necessarily enough just to kind of send them and try to win by themselves. So you're going to see a lot of blitzing, I would imagine. We're going to see exactly how improved Justin Fields is, as a passer in the pocket. Because I think he's going to see some stuff he probably has never seen before, because Zimmer's not been in the league these last few years.
Right.
And again, I don't need to tell you, he was in Cincy a long time ago. I'm sure you remember how much of a pain in the butt his defense were back then to deal with. So I think that's I think the key for the Steelers side of it is, I think they're likely going to see some interesting exotic stuff as Mike Zimmer tries to figure out a way to create a pass rush and create penetration without his two best defensive ends in the game.
Gotcha. So just to wrap you up here, Landon, I'm going to put you on the spot, man. Who wins the game on Sunday?
I kind of have been going back and forth about this. I think the Steelers are now favored to win, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I think that line has moved a little bit. And I think maybe losing Brandon Cooks is the difference. I think this is very much a coin flip game. We're on a Steelers show, so I'll give you the benefit of that. I'm going to pick the Steelers, because I think, look, it's a tough game. You're playing on the road.
Right.
I think they just played a very emotional game, even though the Giants aren't obviously the same challenge as the Steelers. It's a divisional game. It meant more. They lost 2 in a row. This is a tough game. You're playing a non-common opponent on the road in a place that is very difficult to play at. I remember the last time the Cowboys played in Pittsburgh. It was probably the best game that I think Zeke Elliott ever played. Honestly,
It was incredible. I remember.
It was. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a running back play like that. He had a 75+ yard screen touchdown, and then a 60+ yard run, I think, to ice the game. I don't know that I think the Cowboys are going to get that out of this running back crew this game. As long as it doesn't come down to a field goal, then I think the Cowboys may not be able to pull this out. But listen, if you get the Dallas Cowboys lined up on even the 50-yard line with no time left, and you're going to let our kicker kick the ball, he may tell everyone good night, because that's the one positive thing I feel about this team, is that
Right.
I think they got the best kicker in football. So
Gotcha. Well, we appreciate it, Landon. Thank you for taking the time again to join us. From Locked On. But tell everybody exactly where people can find your stuff.
yeah, I mean, please check us out on the Locked On Cowboys podcast, lockedoncowboys.com. We're on YouTube at Locked On Cowboys. Please subscribe. We put out content every day, so come join us. Follow me on Twitter at McCoolBCB, or X, or whatever I'm calling it Twitter. So whatever, follow me there at McCoolBCB, and please check us out.
All right. Thank you, Landon. We appreciate your time today, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, that was our man Landon McCool again from Locked On Dallas, or Locked On Cowboys, excuse me. Hey, anybody out there, like I said, if you're a Cowboys fan or just anybody in general, if you haven't already subscribed to that page, make sure you go and do so. They do a very, very good job over there on Locked On Cowboys. So we appreciate him giving his time for us. Look, like I mentioned before, this is not going to be a blowout. I do think that the Steelers have the advantage in this football game. I think the Steelers need to establish the run. I think they can establish the run. The Cowboys have shown that they can't stop it. Then not only can they not stop it, they also can't run it. So those are two things that just are right in the Pittsburgh Steelers' wheelhouse. Man, can't talk here. So that's in their wheelhouse. So if it is in their wheelhouse, then we need to put the hammer down on that. Don't let them run the football. Don't let them stop us for running. You know, Mike Zimmer's going to come up, just like Landon said. They're going to come up with some exotic stuff, do some things to try to move around guys. Look, I get that the Steelers line is hurt. Some new guys starting in new positions. I get it. But we just have to be able to run the football on the Dallas Cowboys. We just have to be able to do it. If we're not going to be able to run it against them, we're going to have a problem this season. But I'll be honest with you, I think the Steelers are going to be able to do that. Like I said, I got the game 23-16. The Steelers win. Tough game, but that's okay. Football's tough. And the Steelers are made to be a tough game, not built to blow teams out. This is not going to be that game. So we got to get that out of our mind. But we do need to physically whip the Cowboys up front. If we do that, we'll be okay, man. So appreciate everybody joining in. Thank you guys. As always, remember, like, follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when all Steelers almighty content comes out. And don't forget to comment, because you know that I love going back and forth with you guys. We appreciate you. We love you. Here we go, Steelers. We got this one.